I'm Perry, 34 years old, and I never thought my sister's wedding would end with my face stinging from her slap. Amanda always had a temper, but slapping me in front of 300 guests because I wouldn't gift her my penthouse? That crossed a line. I still remember the collective gasp, the painful silence that followed, and most importantly, the stern gaze of Judge Catherine Wilson from across the room. Little did Amanda know that her impulsive action would lead to consequences she never imagined. Before I dive into this family nightmare, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how justice was served in the most unexpected way. Growing up, Amanda and I were inseparable. Only 2 years apart, we shared everything from toys to secrets. Our parents worked multiple jobs to keep us fed and clothed in our small apartment on the outskirts of Boston. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I still remember Amanda defending me against neighborhood bullies when I was 10, swinging her backpack like a weapon and threatening anyone who dared to hurt her big brother. Ironic how things change. I put myself through college working nights at a local real estate office. What started as answering phones evolved into a passion. By 25, I had my license and was selling properties across the city. Every commission went into savings while I continued living in a studio apartment with second-hand furniture. My colleagues bought luxury cars and designer clothes. But I had a different dream. 5 years of 16-hour days, missed holidays, and postponed vacations finally paid off when I purchased my downtown penthouse at 30. The moment I turned the key in that door and gazed at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline, I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. This wasn't just property to me. It represented every late night, every skipped meal, every moment of doubt conquered through sheer determination. Amanda took a different path. She majored in communications, bounced between marketing jobs, and prioritized her social life. I never judged her choices. We all find happiness differently. When she met Richard 3 years ago at a charity gala, she seemed genuinely happy. Richard came from old money, with family connections throughout New England's upper crust. He worked at his father's investment firm and drove cars that cost more than my parents' house. Their engagement announcement came after just 8 months of dating. Our parents were thrilled, already envisioning grandchildren in private schools and summers in the Hamptons. I was happy for Amanda, but concerned about the speed. When I gently suggested they might want to date longer, Amanda bristled. "You're just jealous because you work all the time and don't have anyone," she snapped, then immediately apologized. I dismissed it as pre-engagement jitters. The real changes began during wedding planning. The Amanda I knew, who once made fun of designer labels and called country clubs pretentious personality vacuums, was suddenly obsessed with having the perfect society wedding. Richard's mother, Elaine, a thin woman with permanently pursed lips, accompanied Amanda to every appointment, steering her toward extravagance at every turn. 6 months before the wedding, Amanda and I met for our monthly brunch. Instead of our usual catching up, she spent 2 hours showing me photos of 5-figure floral arrangements and custom invitations that cost more than my first car. "Richard's family expects certain standards," she explained when I questioned the expense. "You wouldn't understand." When the conversation turned to their living situation, Amanda sighed dramatically. "Richard's parents expect us to live in Beacon Hill or Back Bay. They'd die if their son lived anywhere less prestigious. Real estate is your thing. Can't you help us?" I offered to connect them with colleagues for rental options that wouldn't drain their savings. "Renting is throwing money away." "You always say that. It's not ideal, but it's realistic for now," I replied. She stirred her mimosa absently. You have that huge penthouse all to yourself. 3 bedrooms for one person is excessive. Don't you think? I laughed, thinking she was joking. I use the 2nd bedroom as an office and the 3rd for guests. But you rarely have guests, she countered. Her expression turned serious. I was thinking maybe you could give us the penthouse as a wedding present. I nearly choked on my coffee. Amanda, that's my home. I worked years for it. You could buy another place. You know the market. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It would mean so much to us, Perry. Richard's family would finally see that my family has something to offer too. When I explained that my home wasn't available, but I'd help them find something within their budget, her expression shifted to something I'd never seen before. Disappointment, mixed with calculation. She quickly changed the subject, but the atmosphere remained tense. Our parents called me that evening. Amanda mentioned you weren't being very supportive about the wedding, Mom began. I explained the penthouse request. Instead of understanding, Dad sighed. Perry, this is a big opportunity for your sister. Richard's family could open doors for all of us. Would it kill you to make a sacrifice for once? For once? I repeated, stunned. I've been helping with your mortgage for 5 years. That's different, Mom interjected. This is about Amanda's happiness. I ended the call feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate reality where my family had forgotten who I was. Still, I held on to hope that after the wedding, when the stress of planning was behind us, the sister I knew would return. The morning of Amanda's wedding, I arrived at the Boston Harbor Hotel feeling optimistic. The ballroom overlooked the water, crystal chandeliers reflecting sunlight across marble floors. 300 chairs lined the aisle, each decorated with arrangements of white roses and gold ribbon. A string quartet played softly as early guests found their seats. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe this day might heal the growing rift between us. The Boston Harbor Hotel ballroom transformed into something from a luxury magazine spread. Crystal vases holding white roses and gold-painted branches created a winter wonderland effect despite the June heat outside. White silk draped from ceiling to walls, catching the light from thousands of tiny bulbs that mimic stars. The wedding planner, a harried woman with a tablet permanently attached to her hand, directed staff with military precision as they arranged 300 gold Chiavari chairs into perfect rows. I straightened my custom-tailored tuxedo and checked the inside pocket for my speech notes. As the only male in Amanda's immediate family, I would be walking her down the aisle after our father's recent back surgery limited his mobility. It was an honor I took seriously, despite our recent tensions. The guest list read like a who's who of Boston society. Politicians, CEOs, and even a few minor celebrities mingled in the reception area. Among them stood Judge Catherine Wilson, a distinguished woman in her 50s whose reputation for fairness made her respected throughout Massachusetts legal circles. She was apparently Richard's godmother, though I only knew her by reputation from my real estate legal dealings. Perry! There you are. My mother hurried toward me, adjusting her fascinator nervously. Amanda's been asking for you. She's in the bridal suite upstairs. The bridal suite buzzed with activity. Makeup artists and hairstylists worked on the 5 bridesmaids, while a photographer captured every moment. In the center of the chaos, Amanda sat before a lighted mirror, already dressed in her gown, a custom Vera Wang creation that cost more than most cars. Perry, her voice lacked the warmth I'd hoped for. You're late. I'm 20 minutes early according to the schedule, I replied, checking my watch. She waved dismissively. Whatever. Is my gift in the car? I placed a large box wrapped in silver paper on the table beside her. Inside was a pair of antique silver candlesticks that had belonged to our grandmother, professionally restored at considerable expense, along with a generous check. Amanda glanced at the package without opening it. "Is that all?" Before I could respond, the door opened and Elaine entered, followed by Richard's father, Harold. Both wore expressions of polite disdain, as if the five-star hotel suite somehow failed to meet their standards. "Amanda, darling, you look divine," Elaine said, air kissing near Amanda's cheeks to avoid disturbing her makeup. Her gaze landed on me. "And this must be the successful real estate brother we've heard so much about." Her tone made successful sound like a questionable achievement. I extended my hand. "Perry Thompson. Pleasure to meet you." Harold barely touched my fingers before withdrawing. Yes. Amanda mentioned you have a place downtown." "Investment property?" "It's my home," I corrected. "Just the one property." "Curious choice for someone in real estate," he remarked, examining his cufflinks. "Our summer house in Newport has been in the family for generations. You must visit sometime." The implied comparison hung in the air. I smiled tightly, wondering how these people had produced someone Richard, who in our limited interactions had seemed genuinely kind, if somewhat passive. Amanda stood suddenly. "Perry, can we speak privately?" She led me to a small adjoining room and closed the door. For a moment, I glimpsed the sister I recognized. Vulnerability, replacing the brittle facade she'd been wearing. "They're driving me crazy," she whispered. "Nothing is ever good enough." I squeezed her hand. "It's your wedding day. Try to enjoy it regardless of their expectations." She nodded, then hesitated. "Richard and I had a setback. The Beacon Hill brownstone we put an offer on fell through yesterday. The sellers accepted a cash offer 20% above asking. That's rough, but you'll find something else. His parents are already disappointed. They've been telling everyone we're moving to Beacon Hill after the honeymoon." She twisted her engagement ring nervously. "Perry, I've been thinking about what I asked before. About your penthouse." My heart sank. "Amanda, just hear me out." She interrupted. "It would be temporary. Maybe a year while we find the perfect place. Richard's father would increase his position at the firm, and we'd be able to afford somewhere better eventually. Why not rent somewhere nice temporarily?" "Because," she hissed, dropping all pretense, "they think my family is beneath them already. Telling them we're renting would confirm every assumption they've made. But if they knew my brother gave us his penthouse as a wedding gift, it would show them we have the same values they do." "The same values?" "Amanda, I bought that place through work and sacrifice, not family connections." Her expression hardened. "So you're refusing to help me?" "Again, I'm refusing to give away my home. That's different from refusing to help. Whatever helps you sleep at night." She muttered, "I've got to get back. The photographer wants pre-ceremony shots." As she reached for the door handle, she paused. "I told Richard's parents you were surprising us with the penthouse today. That's why they're being so friendly. Just so you know." She left me standing there, stunned by the manipulation. I needed air. Slipping out a side door, I found myself on a small balcony overlooking the harbor. The weight of Amanda's expectations and dishonesty pressed against my chest. From behind me, a voice spoke. "Beautiful day for a wedding." I turned to find Judge Wilson standing there, elegant, in a navy dress, a glass of water in her hand. "Indeed," I managed, trying to compose myself. She studied me thoughtfully. "You're the brother of the bride. Perry, is it?" "I'm Catherine Wilson, a friend of the groom's family." "Judge Wilson, your reputation precedes you." She smiled slightly. "All good things, I hope." Your ruling on the Cambridge property rights case last year was brilliantly reasoned, I said, professional interest momentarily distracting me from my troubles. A real estate man, she noted, always refreshing to meet someone who appreciates the nuances of property law. She glanced at her watch. I believe they're looking for you inside. Something about walking the bride down the aisle? The ceremony proceeded without incident. Amanda looked radiant as I escorted her down the aisle. Richard beamed at the sight of her. Genuine love, evident in his expression. For those precious minutes, I allowed myself to hope that everything would work out, that my sister's happiness with Richard might overcome the materialistic pressure from his family. That hope began to fade during the cocktail hour, when I overheard a conversation between Richard and his father. The Thompson boy claims he hasn't agreed to give them the penthouse, Harold said tersely. Richard looked uncomfortable. Amanda said she was still discussing it with him. Discussing? She assured us it was a done deal. That's why we withdrew the offer on the Milton property. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Richard placated. Amanda wouldn't mislead us. I slipped away before they noticed me, a knot forming in my stomach. The situation was worse than I thought. Amanda hadn't just told them about a hypothetical gift. She'd presented it as a certainty, creating expectations that would now inevitably lead to disappointment and embarrassment. The reception began with all the traditional elements. The newlyweds shared their first dance to At Last by Etta James, a choice that seemed increasingly ironic given the circumstances. Champagne flowed freely. Waiters circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres that cost more per bite than most people's daily food budget. And a 10-piece band played softly in the background. From the outside, it was picture perfect. I maintained my distance from Richard's family, positioning myself at a table with distant cousins who were more interested in the open bar than in real estate discussions. My toast as brother of the bride was scheduled after dinner, giving me time to revise my speech. The heartfelt words I'd originally prepared now seemed naive. Amanda's consumption of champagne increased steadily throughout the evening. I watched her smile grow more rigid with each flute, her laughter becoming louder and less genuine. Richard remained at her side, his expression increasingly concerned as he whispered in her ear, likely suggesting she slow down. During the 4-course dinner, I couldn't help but notice the constant glances from Richard's relatives. Elaine, in particular, kept leaning toward other guests at her table, whispering behind her hand while looking in my direction. The weight of unmet expectations hung over me like a storm cloud. The brother's quite the disappointment, I overheard one of Richard's aunts say as she passed my table. Apparently, he's reneging on a wedding gift. After they announced it to everyone, my appetite disappeared. I pushed away my barely touched filet mignon and considered making an early exit. Before I could decide, Amanda appeared beside me, her white gown rustling as she grabbed my elbow with surprising force. "We need to talk," she hissed, her breath sweet with champagne. Now, she pulled me toward a small antechamber off the main ballroom. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face me. "Everyone's asking about the penthouse," she said without preamble. "Richard's mother keeps bringing it up, asking when we're moving in." "That's a problem you created," I replied, keeping my voice level. "You told them I was giving you something I never agreed to. I thought you'd change your mind. You're my brother. You're supposed to support me." Her voice cracked slightly. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Richard's family judges everything. My dress, my family, where we'll live. The penthouse would solve everything. No. It would solve one thing temporarily, while creating a much bigger problem. Amanda, You and Richard need to establish your own life together, not try to meet impossible expectations. She paced the small room, her dress train dragging behind her. Easy for you to say. You've always done everything perfectly. College, career, investments. I'm the screw-up who can't even secure a decent place to live. That's not true, I protested. You've accomplished plenty, and there's nothing wrong with starting small. Small? She laughed bitterly. You think the Prestons start small? Their gardener lives in a bigger house than our parents. Then, maybe you should reconsider whether these are the values you want to adopt. Her expression hardened. You think you're so much better than everyone because you built your success yourself. Well, guess what? Not everyone wants to sacrifice their entire youth working. Some of us want to enjoy life, and some of us don't want to be indebted to people who look down on us. I countered. Amanda, be reasonable. You're asking me to give away a $2 million property, so your in-laws will respect you. Do you really think that's fair or healthy? What's not healthy is letting your sister get humiliated at her own wedding. She was practically shouting now. You could buy another place tomorrow if you wanted to. That's not the point, and you know it. A knock at the door interrupted us. Our mother entered, her expression tense. People are starting to notice you're both missing, she said. Amanda, Richard is looking for you. We're discussing Perry's wedding gift, Amanda replied pointedly. Mom turned to me, her expression pleading. Perry, honey, couldn't you just help your sister out? It would mean so much to her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, she's asking for my home. Not a toaster. Or a check. It's just a place, Mom replied, waving dismissively. You can get another one. This is about family. Exactly. It's about family. Family doesn't pressure you to give up something important or make promises on your behalf without asking. Mom's expression shifted to disappointment. I thought we raised you better than this. To be generous, to put others first. Generosity is freely given, not coerced. I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. The door opened again, and Dad entered, leaning heavily on his cane. What's going on? The Prestons are asking questions. Amanda immediately burst into tears, carefully dabbing under her eyes to preserve her makeup. Perry won't give us the penthouse, and now I have to tell Richard's family I lied. Dad's expression darkened. Son, is this true? You'd let your sister start her marriage with this kind of embarrassment? She created this situation, I said, feeling increasingly ganged up on. I never promised anything, but you could fix it, Dad insisted. That's what family does. We fix things for each other. Make sacrifices. I've made plenty of sacrifices, I said quietly, including helping with your mortgage after the layoffs, paying for Mom's knee surgery when insurance denied it, and covering Amanda's credit card debt twice, none of which I've ever mentioned or held over anyone's head. A flash of shame crossed Dad's face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. That's different. This is about your sister's future, with her new family. Her future shouldn't depend on my property, I maintained. Mom put her arm around Amanda. We should get back to the reception. We'll figure something out. As they turned to leave, Amanda looked back at me, her expression a mixture of hurt and calculation. The toasts are coming up. I hope you've prepared something appropriate. Left alone with Dad, I braced for more pressure. Instead, he sighed heavily. Your sister's always been dramatic, he admitted. But this day means a lot to her. I know that. And I want her to be happy. But giving away my home won't lead to real happiness. It'll just push the problem down the road. He tapped his cane against the floor thoughtfully. Maybe so, But consider this. If you don't find a way to help her save face today, this rift might never heal. With that concerning warning, he followed the others back to the reception, leaving me alone with an impossible choice. The reception had reached that phase where formality begins to loosen. Several guests had abandoned suit jackets and high heels. The dance floor was consistently full, and conversations had grown louder to compete with the band. I returned to my seat, reviewing my speech notes while trying to ignore the occasional glares from Richard's relatives. The MC, a friend of Richard's from college with an overly enthusiastic delivery, took the microphone to announce that dinner was concluding and toasts would begin shortly. A server refilled champagne glasses throughout the room. At the head table, Amanda whispered intensely to Richard, who nodded repeatedly while casting nervous glances in my direction. I was scheduled to speak third, after Richard's best man and Amanda's maid of honor. This gave me precious minutes to decide how to handle the situation. Should I maintain my boundaries and risk public family discord, or should I temporarily play along to save Amanda's pride, knowing I'd have to correct the misunderstanding later? Before I could decide, Amanda rose from the head table and walked directly toward me. The determined set of her jaw concerned me. She'd clearly made a decision of her own. "Last chance," she said quietly, stopping beside my chair. "Are you going to announce the gift during your toast or not?" "Amanda, I can't give you my home. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but it's not a reasonable request." Her fingers tightened around her champagne flute. "After everything I've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, genuinely confused. "I've included you in my life, introduced you to my friends, invited you to events. I could have left you behind when I upgraded to Richard's circle. But I didn't." The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. "Is that how you see our relationship? That you've been doing me favors by treating me like a brother? You know what? Forget it." She turned away, then looked back. "Just so you know, I've adjusted the toast order. You're speaking last." A chill ran through me. Amanda was unpredictable when angry, and giving her time to speak before me was concerning. Still, I couldn't imagine she would create a scene at her own wedding. The best man's toast was predictably full of college anecdotes and gentle ribbing, ending with a heartfelt wish for the couple's happiness. The maid of honor, tearful and sincere, spoke of Amanda's loyalty and generous spirit, drawing appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Then, Amanda herself stood and took the microphone, surprising everyone. "This wasn't on the program. Thank you all for sharing this special day with Richard and me," she began, her voice steady despite the amount of champagne she'd consumed. "We're so blessed to be surrounded by family and friends who support us." She turned toward my table, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I especially want to thank my brother, Perry, who has always been there for me, and who has made our new life together possible with his incredible generosity." My stomach dropped. She wouldn't dare. As many of you know, starting a life together requires a home. Richard and I are beyond grateful to announce that Perry has given us the most meaningful wedding gift we could imagine, his beautiful downtown penthouse, where we'll begin our married life when we return from our honeymoon. Applause erupted throughout the room. Richard's parents beamed proudly. Friends raised their glasses in my direction. Judge Wilson, I noticed, watched the scene with narrowed eyes. Amanda continued, her voice rising with theatrical emotion. "Perry, your selfless gift means everything to us. Would you like to say a few words?" She extended the microphone toward me, her expression a clear challenge. The room fell silent as 300 pairs of eyes turned in my direction. A trap had been set, and I had to choose whether to humiliate my sister on her wedding day or allow a devastating lie to stand. I rose slowly and took the microphone. Thank you, Amanda. I'm touched by your words. Relief flashed across her face, quickly replaced by triumph. However, I continued carefully. I think there's been a misunderstanding. While I'm happy to help you and Richard find a wonderful home, I haven't offered my penthouse as a gift. I'm not sure how this confusion arose, but I wanted to clarify before expectations developed further. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Richard's father's face darkened to a dangerous shade of red. Amanda's expression shifted from shock to rage in an instant. You're really doing this? Here? Now? She hissed, grabbing the microphone back. Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse my brother's poor attempt at humor. Of course, he's giving us the penthouse. He's just embarrassed by the attention. Amanda, I said quietly, please don't make this worse. I'm making it worse? She whispered furiously. You're humiliating me. In front of everyone. You created this situation by announcing something that isn't true. She stepped closer, voice dropping to ensure only I could hear. Fix this right now, or I'll never speak to you again. I can't give you what you're asking for. The slap came without warning, her palm connecting with my cheek with enough force to snap my head sideways. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. Someone gasped. A glass shattered. Every eye in the room witnessed my sister's palm print blooming red across my face. You selfish, heartless bastard, Amanda shouted, abandoning all pretense of composure. You'd rather see me embarrassed in front of everyone than give up your precious status symbol. You've always been jealous that I found someone while you're alone in that big empty penthouse. Richard rushed forward, attempting to guide Amanda away, but she shook off his hand. You all should know who my brother really is, she continued, gesturing wildly to the stunned crowd. He pretends to be self-made, but he's just selfish. He'd rather see his only sister suffer than share any of his success. Finally, Richard managed to wrap his arm around her waist, whispering urgently in her ear. Whatever he said seemed to penetrate her rage. Her shoulders slumped, and she allowed him to lead her away from the center of the room. In the silence that followed, I became acutely aware of Judge Wilson watching the scene unfold, her expression inscrutable as she made notes on a small pad. Richard's parents huddled with the wedding planner, likely discussing damage control. Guests awkwardly avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their dessert plates or fingernails. My parents approached, Mom's eyes filled with tears, Dad's face ashen. Are you happy now? Mom whispered. You've ruined her special day. Without waiting for a response, they followed after Amanda and Richard, leaving me standing alone in a room full of strangers and judgmental stares. I placed the microphone on the nearest table and walked toward the exit, dignity intact but heartbreaking. As I passed Judge Wilson's table, she looked up from her notepad. Mr. Thompson, she said quietly, sometimes the hardest boundaries to maintain are the ones we set with those we love most. But that doesn't make them any less necessary. With a slight nod of acknowledgement, I continued toward the door, certain of only one thing. Life would never be the same after tonight. The day after the wedding, I woke to 37 missed calls and 62 text messages. Most were from family members, expressing disappointment in my selfish behavior. Amanda had apparently wasted no time crafting her narrative. I scrolled through the messages, each one twisting the knife deeper. From Mom, how could you embarrass your sister like that? We raised you better. From Dad, son, you need to make this right. Family comes first. From Amanda, thanks for ruining what should have been the happiest day of my life. Hope you enjoy your empty penthouse while my marriage falls apart. From various cousins and aunts, variations of shame on you and family, should stick together. Not a single message acknowledged that Amanda had created the situation by lying, or that she had physically assaulted me in front of hundreds of witnesses. In their version of reality, I was the villain for refusing to give away my home as a surprise gift. I silenced my phone and spent Sunday in my penthouse, the home that had somehow become the center of this family drama. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city I loved, I tried to imagine willingly giving this place up. The thought created a physical ache in my chest. This wasn't just real estate. It was the physical manifestation of every sacrifice I'd made. Monday morning brought no reprieve. I arrived at my office to find colleagues whispering behind cupped hands. Word had spread quickly through Boston's interconnected social and business circles. My assistant Megan placed a stack of messages on my desk with an apologetic smile. Mr. Erickson from the Chamber of Commerce wondered if you're still attending the fundraiser Thursday, she said carefully. And Mrs. Preston called 3 times. Richard's mother, she clarified, seeing my confusion. She was quite insistent about speaking with you. I thanked her and closed my office door, needing time to think. The Prestons clearly weren't letting this go. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard, the first direct communication since the wedding. We need to talk. Can we meet? Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee that afternoon at a neutral location downtown. I arrived early, securing a table in the corner where we could speak privately. Richard entered 10 minutes late, looking haggard, the perfect Windsor knot of his wedding day replaced by a loosened tie and wrinkled collar. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sliding into the seat opposite mine. Things have been challenging. I can imagine, I replied neutrally. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Amanda's upset. She feels betrayed. She's not the one who was lied about and slapped in public. Richard had the grace to look ashamed. I know. What happened was inexcusable. But you have to understand the pressure she's under from my family. That doesn't justify her actions. No, it doesn't. He agreed, surprising me. But I'm trying to salvage the situation. My parents have been relentless, asking when we're moving into the penthouse. I've tried explaining there was a misunderstanding, but they insist Amanda assured them it was a done deal months ago. It was never a done deal. It was never even on the table. I believe you, he said quietly. But Amanda's caught in her own lie, and she's doubling down rather than admitting the truth. I studied him thoughtfully. Why are you telling me this, Richard? He hesitated. Because I need your help finding us a place to live, something respectable enough for my parents without bankrupting us. The request seemed reasonable enough, certainly compared to gifting them my home. I can connect you with some colleagues who specialize in newlywed budgets. Thank you. He seemed genuinely relieved. And about the penthouse. That's not happening, I said firmly. I understand. I just want to know, is there any way you might consider selling it to us? With a family discount? My trust fund could cover a decent down payment. Before I could respond, the coffee shop door swung open, and Amanda stormed in, followed closely by Elaine and Harold Preston. Their coordinated arrival made it clear this had been a setup. I knew it, Amanda exclaimed, pointing at me dramatically, meeting behind my back to scheme. Amanda, please, Richard stood, trying to calm her. This isn't what we discussed. Elaine stepped forward, her thin lips pressed into an even thinner line. Mr. Thompson, this situation has become untenable. Harold and I have already announced to our friends that the newlyweds will be residing in your property. To backtrack now would be socially devastating. I'm sorry for your predicament, I replied evenly. But it's one of your family's creation, not mine. Harold's face flushed. Now see here, young man. In our circle, one's word is one's bond. Amanda gave her word that this property transfer was arranged. Then Amanda should not have given her word about something that wasn't hers to give. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, though whether from genuine emotion or calculated effect, I couldn't tell. You promised, Perry. When Mom and Dad got sick 2 years ago, you said you'd always take care of me. Taking care of you doesn't mean giving you my home, I countered, refusing to be manipulated. Semantics. Elaine dismissed, with a wave of her manicured hand. The point is, a solution must be found. What would it take, Mr. Thompson? Everyone has a price. I stood, gathering my coat. Not for my home, and not for my self-respect. Richard, my offer to help you find a suitable place within your budget stands. The rest of you, I have nothing further to say. As I moved toward the door, Harold called after me. This isn't over, Thompson, not by a long shot. His words proved prophetic. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my office. Inside was a formal letter from Preston and Associates, the law firm owned by Harold's brother, claiming that I had created a legally binding verbal contract by promising the penthouse to Amanda and Richard as a wedding gift. The letter demanded I transfer the deed within 30 days or face legal action. I immediately contacted Marcus Jenkins, a real estate attorney I'd worked with on several complex transactions. His response after reviewing the letter was both reassuring and concerning. This is largely posturing, Marcus explained over lunch. They have no case for a verbal contract of this magnitude. Massachusetts law requires real estate transfers to be in writing. However, I don't like the sound of that however, I interjected. However, he continued, they're clearly willing to make this messy. Even a frivolous lawsuit can become expensive and time-consuming to defend, and the Prestons have connections throughout Boston's legal community. I was considering this unpleasant reality when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Excusing myself, I answered to find Judge Catherine Wilson's judicial assistant on the line. Judge Wilson would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience regarding a personal matter, she informed me. Would tomorrow at 2 p.m. work for your schedule? Bewildered by this unexpected contact, I agreed to the appointment, wondering what possible interest a superior court judge could have in my family drama. The following afternoon found me in the austere waiting area outside Judge Wilson's chambers. Her assistant ushered me in precisely at 2 o'clock. The judge sat behind an imposing desk, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed a document. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a chair. I've asked you here because a concerning matter has come to my attention. She slid a legal filing across the desk. I recognized the Preston and Associates letterhead immediately. They've actually filed suit, I said, scanning the document. Yes, though not yet served. I noticed it during my review of new civil filings. She removed her glasses. Normally, I wouldn't involve myself in a pending case. But given what I witnessed at the wedding, I felt a moral obligation to speak with you. I don't understand, I admitted. Mr. Thompson, I was present when your sister physically assaulted you and publicly made false claims. As an officer of the court, I cannot in good conscience allow such behavior to be rewarded through our legal system. My confusion must have shown, because she continued with more clarity. This case will almost certainly be assigned to my courtroom based on our current rotation schedule. Given what I witnessed, I would need to recuse myself. Before doing so, I wanted to inform you that I would be willing to provide a sworn statement regarding the events I observed, should it prove helpful to your defense. I was momentarily speechless. That's extremely generous, Your Honor. It's not generosity, Mr. Thompson. It's justice. I believe in our legal system, but I've seen too many people with resources use it as a bludgeon against those who stand their ground. She leaned forward. Your sister's behavior that night was reprehensible, and the subsequent attempt to use litigation as leverage is concerning. She glanced at her watch. I've taken enough of your time. My assistant will provide contact information for my personal attorney, who can properly depose me, if necessary. And Mr. Thompson? Yes? Stand firm. Boundaries exist for a reason. I left the courthouse feeling both validated and apprehensive. Judge Wilson's support was unexpected and valuable, but the reality remained that I was now engaged in a legal battle with my own sister. That evening, as predicted, a process server arrived at my door with the official lawsuit. Flipping through the pages, I noted with dismay that Amanda had not only claimed I'd promised the penthouse, but had significantly embellished the story, claiming I'd made the promise repeatedly at family gatherings and had even given her a key. I hadn't. What hurt most wasn't the lies, but seeing my sister's signature on the document, a formal declaration of war against her own brother. Whatever happened in court, I feared our relationship might be damaged beyond repair. The Boston courthouse buzzed with activity on the morning of our preliminary hearing. My attorney, Marcus, assured me this was largely procedural, a chance for the judge to determine if the case had enough merit to proceed to trial. Given the absurdity of the claims, he was confident we could get it dismissed quickly. Remember, he advised, as we climbed the courthouse steps, say as little as possible. Let me do the talking. The designated courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. Amanda sat in the front row with Richard beside her, both dressed as if attending a corporate board meeting. Behind them sat my parents, pointedly avoiding eye contact as I entered. The Preston contingent filled an entire row, their collective wealth evident in custom suits and quiet confidence. Harold nodded to several court officers by name, his comfort in these surroundings making it clear he was no stranger to litigation. Judge Randall Holbrook entered, a man in his 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. After the bailiff called the court to order, he peered at the assembled parties over reading glasses. Thompson v. Thompson, he announced, reviewing the file. A claim of verbal contract regarding real estate. Interesting. Amanda's attorney, William Preston himself, Harold's brother and senior partner of their firm, rose with practiced gravitas. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of promised consideration. The defendant verbally agreed to gift his penthouse property to the plaintiffs as a wedding present, a fact witnessed by multiple family members. The plaintiffs made significant life decisions based on this promise, including declining other housing opportunities. We're simply asking the court to enforce this agreement. Marcus stood next. Your Honor, this claim is without merit. Massachusetts law explicitly requires real estate transfers to be in writing. No such document exists because no such promise was ever made. Furthermore, we have evidence that the plaintiff fabricated this claim and has engaged in coercive and even violent behavior in an attempt to obtain my client's property. Judge Holbrook frowned. Violent behavior? Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff physically assaulted the defendant at her wedding reception after he refused to publicly announce this fictional gift. We have witnesses prepared to testify to this fact. William Preston scoffed. A minor family disagreement, exaggerated for dramatic effect. The alleged slap was merely an emotional reaction during a highly charged moment. The slap left a mark visible the next day, Marcus countered, and was witnessed by over 300 guests. Judge Holbrook held up his hand. I've read enough in these filings to warrant further examination. Let's proceed with initial testimony. Amanda was called first, her performance masterful. Tears glistened, but never fell, as she described how I had promised the penthouse during a family dinner the previous Christmas. Perry said it would be his gift to us, a foundation for our new life, she testified, voice trembling perfectly. He even joked about which furniture we could keep and which we should replace. My parents corroborated her story, both claiming to remember this phantom conversation with remarkable detail. Dad went so far as to claim I had shown Amanda floor plans with suggested renovations, something that had never occurred. When it was my turn to testify, I stated simply and clearly that no such promise had ever been made, that Amanda had first requested the penthouse 6 months before the wedding, and that I had immediately and consistently declined. If I may, Your Honor, Marcus interjected, we have a witness who can provide independent verification of events pertinent to this case. Judge Holbrook nodded. Proceed. The defense calls Judge Catherine Wilson. A murmur swept through the courtroom. William Preston's composure cracked momentarily before he objected. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Judge Wilson is a sitting judge in this very courthouse, which is why I've recused myself from this case, Judge Wilson replied, entering from a side door. I was a guest at the wedding in question and witnessed relevant events firsthand. Judge Holbrook, clearly surprised but intrigued, allowed her to be sworn in. Judge Wilson took the stand with quiet dignity, her testimony precise and devastating. I was seated at table 14, approximately 20 feet from where the incident occurred, she began. Throughout the evening, I observed the plaintiff consuming significant amounts of champagne while appearing increasingly agitated. During the reception, she took the microphone and publicly announced that the defendant had given her his penthouse as a wedding gift. She described the subsequent events with clinical detail. My careful correction, Amanda's escalating anger, and finally, the slap that echoed through the ballroom. In my professional opinion, she concluded, this was not a minor family disagreement, but a clear case of assault and an attempt to use public pressure to coerce a property transfer that had not been agreed to. William Preston attempted to discredit her testimony, suggesting her view might have been obstructed or her recollection faulty. Judge Wilson's response was measured but firm. Counselor, I've spent 30 years evaluating testimony and evidence. I know what I saw. She turned to Judge Holbrook. Additionally, I believe the court should be aware that security cameras at the Boston Harbor Hotel captured the incident. I took the liberty of requesting that footage be preserved. This revelation caused visible panic at the plaintiff's table. Amanda leaned over to whisper urgently to William Preston, whose confident demeanor had completely evaporated. After a brief recess to review the hotel's security footage and chambers, Judge Holbrook returned with a decided shift in demeanor. His expression was stern as he addressed the court. Having reviewed the evidence, including video that clearly shows the plaintiff physically striking the defendant after he contradicted her public claim about the penthouse, I find no basis for allowing this case to proceed further. The complaint is dismissed with prejudice. He looked directly at William Preston. Furthermore, Counselor, I am deeply troubled by the misrepresentations made to this court. The video evidence directly contradicts testimony provided by your client and her witnesses. I strongly suggest you advise your clients about the penalties for perjury before they consider any further legal action. Amanda's face crumpled as the reality of her defeat sank in. Richard placed a supportive hand on her back, but she shrugged it off angrily. My parents sat stunned, perhaps realizing for the first time that their daughter's version of events might not align with reality. As we filed out of the courtroom, Judge Wilson approached me. "Justice was served today," she said quietly. "But family wounds take longer to heal than legal ones. Give it time." End of 7. Give it time. I nodded, watching Amanda leave with Richard and his parents, her back rigid with anger. My own parents followed, still unable to meet my eyes. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. "Congratulations. It's not often a case gets dismissed this decisively, but as I watched my fractured family disperse into the busy street, victory felt hollow. I had protected what was rightfully mine, but at what cost? 3 weeks after the court dismissal, life had settled into an uncomfortable new normal. I hadn't spoken to Amanda or my parents since the hearing. Work provided a welcome distraction, but evenings in my penthouse, once peaceful, now felt tinged with a bittersweet awareness of what defending it had cost me. One morning, my assistant transferred a call from Judge Wilson's office. Her judicial assistant explained that the judge would like to meet for lunch, if I was amenable. Curious, I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the harbor, far from the courthouse and legal circles. Judge Wilson, dressed in a casual blazer rather than her judicial robes, greeted me warmly. "Thank you for joining me, Perry. I wanted to check how you're doing after everything." "I'm managing," I replied honestly. "Work keeps me busy." "And your family?" I hesitated. Radio silence. "I think they're still processing." She nodded thoughtfully. "Family conflicts are the most difficult. In my 30 years on the bench, I've seen property disputes destroy lifelong relationships. Money and real estate have a way of revealing people's true characters. I never thought my sister would go to such lengths," I admitted. "We were close once." "May I offer some perspective?" she asked. When I nodded, she continued. "What happened wasn't really about your penthouse. It was about your sister's insecurities and her need for validation from her in-laws. The property became a symbol, a way to prove she was worthy of joining their world. That doesn't excuse lying or physical assault." "No, it doesn't," she agreed firmly. "Your boundaries were appropriate and necessary, but understanding the underlying dynamics might help you process what happened and eventually find a path forward." She shared stories from her own family, a sister who didn't speak to her for 5 years after a disagreement over their mother's care, a brother who borrowed money and disappeared, only to return decades later, seeking reconciliation. "The hardest lesson I've learned," she said as we finished dessert, "is that you can maintain your boundaries while still leaving the door open, a crack for future healing. Not every relationship can or should be salvaged, but time has a way of shifting perspectives." Her words stayed with me in the weeks that followed. I focused on rebuilding my routine and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during the legal battle. Marcus invited me to join a recreational basketball league, which provided both exercise and new social connections unrelated to my family drama. 3 months after the wedding, I received a text from Richard. "Can we talk?" Just me. We met at a coffee shop near my office. Richard looked different, slimmer, with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Amanda and I are separating," he said without preamble. The pressure from my family became unbearable. They blamed her for the penthouse fiasco, as they call it. She blamed me for not defending her more aggressively. "It's been toxic for months." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. My parents never accepted that they wouldn't get their fairy tale ending. They've been pushing us toward the divorce lawyers. He stirred his coffee absently. I wanted you to hear it from me before the gossip started. I appreciate that. How is she doing? Struggling. She moved back in with your parents last week. He hesitated. She won't admit it, but I think she regrets how everything happened. Pride is a difficult thing to overcome. After Richard left, I sat contemplating whether to reach out to Amanda. Judge Wilson's advice about leaving doors cracked open echoed in my mind. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Dad's in the hospital. Minor stroke. He's asking for you. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Dad looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in the hospital bed. Mom sat beside him, her face showing every minute of her sleepless vigil. When she saw me, she stood and, to my surprise, embraced me tightly. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "He was so worried you wouldn't." Dad was awake but tired, his speech slightly slurred from the stroke. "Son," he managed, reaching for my hand. "I'm sorry. Don't worry about any of that now," I assured him. "Just focus on getting better." "No," he insisted. "Need to say it. We were wrong. Pressured you. Shouldn't have." Tears stung my eyes at this unexpected acknowledgement. "It's okay, Dad. We'll work through it." Later, in the hospital cafeteria, Mom explained how Dad's stroke had prompted serious reflection. Seeing him in that bed, not knowing if he'd wake up. "It puts things in perspective," she said. "All the drama over property and status symbols seems so pointless now." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "We made mistakes, Perry. Got caught up in Amanda's excitement about joining this prestigious family. Forgot our values somewhere along the way." "What about Amanda?" I asked cautiously. Mom sighed. "She's hurting. Divorce looming. Reputation damaged. Living back in her childhood bedroom. She's not ready to admit her part in everything yet. But she's asking about you. That's a start." 2 more months passed. Dad recovered slowly but steadily. I resumed Sunday dinners at their house, carefully avoiding mention of Amanda, who always seemed to be out when I visited. Mom assured me she was making progress, working with a therapist to process everything that had happened. On the 1-year anniversary of the wedding, I found myself alone in my penthouse, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The doorman called to announce a visitor. Amanda. She stood in my doorway, looking nothing like the bridezilla of a year ago. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she carried a small gift bag. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. I stepped aside, allowing her into the space she had once tried to claim as her own. She walked to the windows, gazing out at the view. "It really is beautiful," she said quietly. "I can see why you fought so hard to keep it." "It wasn't just about the property," I replied. "I know that now." She turned to face me. "It was about respect, boundaries, values, all the things I trampled in my desperation to impress people who, it turns out, were never worth impressing." She handed me the gift bag. Inside was a framed photo of us as children, arms around each other, gap-toothed grins wide and genuine. "I've been in therapy for 6 months," she explained, "trying to understand why I became someone I don't recognize, why I was willing to sacrifice my relationship with my brother for material gain and social status." She took a deep breath. "I'm so deeply sorry, Perry, for the lies, for the manipulation, for the slap, for all of it." "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. Richard leaving helped. It was like waking up from a trance. Then Dad's stroke. She blinked back tears. And honestly, seeing you stand your ground, you knew who you were and what mattered to you. I lost myself completely. We talked for hours that night. Painfully honest conversations about family dynamics, insecurities, and the long road to rebuilding trust. There were no instant solutions or magical reconciliations, but it was a beginning. In the year that followed, our relationship slowly mended. Amanda found a job she enjoyed at a nonprofit, moved into a modest apartment she could actually afford, and began dating someone who valued her for herself, not her connections. I sold my penthouse eventually, not because anyone pressured me, but because I was ready for a change, investing in a smaller place and using the proceeds to start a foundation, helping first-generation college students achieve financial independence. Judge Wilson became a mentor and friend, her wisdom guiding me through professional challenges and personal growth. At her retirement party, she reminded me of our conversation after the court case. See? Time does shift perspectives, she said, gesturing to where Amanda stood, chatting comfortably with my colleagues. You maintained your boundaries, but left the door open. That takes courage and compassion. The greatest lesson I learned from the whole ordeal wasn't about property rights or legal battles. It was about the courage to stand firm when it would be easier to give in. The wisdom to understand that others' demands often stem from their own insecurities, and the patience to allow healing to unfold in its own time. Sometimes in life, the things that seem to break us apart eventually reveal who we truly are and what truly matters. It's not about the penthouses or possessions, but about remaining true to yourself while offering others the grace to find their own way back to authenticity. Have you ever had to stand your ground with family when it would have been easier to give in? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. Thanks for listening. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.